Genexus Enterprise AI provides a set of different APIs that, on one hand, allow for integration with large language model (LLM) systems, and, on the other hand, enable interaction with the different assistants defined. In order to use these APIs, it's necessary to consider the following generic variables. The base URL variable, which corresponds to the base URL for the installation of Genexus Enterprise AI, for example, pause, or the value provided. Also, the SIA API token variable, which corresponds to an API token generated for each project. To use an API, each request must be authenticated using an API token. As we know, these tokens are managed in the Genexus Enterprise AI backoffice and uniquely identify the sender of the request. This token must be provided via HTTP basic authentication. Once authenticated, all endpoints within the scope of the API to be used can be accessed. For security reasons, we strongly recommend not to share API tokens and to revoke them immediately if they're compromised. Now let's talk about errors. Error handling is done through HTTP response codes, which communicate the status of an API request. Codes in the 200 range indicate that the request was successful and the server returned the expected data. On the other hand, codes in the 400 range mean that the request failed due to a client-side error, such as missing or invalid parameters, unauthorized access, or any other request failure. Codes in the 500 range suggest that there's an error on the server side and that the request could not be completed due to a server malfunction or a connectivity problem. Fortunately, these types of errors are rare in the service. By tracking these HTTP response codes, users can easily understand whether the request succeeded or failed and the likely causes of the error, if any. Alright, let's move on to versioning. The API version control strategy is designed to minimize application outages when backward incompatible changes are introduced. Every time changes are made to an API, a new version is released. This approach allows you to continue using the previous version of the API until you can upgrade to the latest version. It's highly recommended to always specify the version number when making requests for an API to ensure the correct behavior of the application. By using version control, we ensure that the application remains stable and functional, while providing access to the latest API features and functionality. Finally, it's important to mention that Genexus Enterprise AI has a cache control that's enabled by default for APIs, but disabled when accessing from the front end. This cache expires after 7 days.